Well, on today's spell, we're talking about what you're thinking of. Detect thoughts. This is what you're thinking of, isn't it? Second level divination, casting time of 1 action, range of self, components verbal somatic material, a copper piece. Oh, it's a penny for your thoughts. Duration, concentration, up to 1 minute. For the duration, you can read the thoughts of certain creatures when you cast the spell, and as your action on each of your turns until the spell ends, you can focus your mind on any one creature that you can see within 30 feet of you. If the creature you choose has an intelligence of 3 or lower, or doesn't speak any language, the creature is unaffected. You initially learn the surface thoughts of the creature, what is most on its mind at that moment, as an action. You can either shift your attention to another creature's thoughts or attempt to probe deeper into the same creature's mind. If you probe deeper, the target must make a wisdom saving throw. If it fails, you gain insight into its reasoning, if any. Its emotional state, and something that looms large in its mind, such as something it worries over, loves, or hates. If it succeeds, the spell ends. Either way, the target knows that you are probing into its mind, and unless you shift your attention to another creature's thoughts, the creature can use its action on its turn to make an intelligence check contested by your intelligence check. If it succeeds, the spell ends. Questions verbally directed at the target creature naturally shape the course of its thoughts, so this spell is particularly effective as part of interrogation. There's no real rules there, that's just a recommendation in the spell's description on where to use it. I was about to mention it. You can also use the spell to detect the presence of thinking creatures you can't see. When you cast the spell, or as your action during the duration, you can search for thoughts within 30 feet of you. The spell can penetrate barriers, but 2 feet of rock, 2 inches of any metal other than lead, or a thin sheet of lead blocks you. You can't detect a creature with an intelligence, but not dirt or wood! You can't detect a creature with an intelligence of 3 or lower, or one that doesn't speak any language. Once you detect the presence of any creature in this way, you can read its thoughts for the rest of the duration as described above, even if you can't see it. But it must still be within range. Okay. The mind-reading spell. Kind of. Yes, actually, yeah. No, the mind-reading spell. I was going to bring up that it could best be used in interrogations and likely would be picked up for such, both world-building and players-wise, but the spell description does it for me. There's no rules tied to that clause on what you do in this situation. It is a separate, short segment in between different rules of just, hey, here's where best to use it. Essentially describing the scenario it would be best for. It'd be like if Fireball described, hey, hit targets in a group. Also, I was originally going to go into the fact that you still had to see a creature to actually read into their thoughts, but you don't have to. It takes an extra action, but later on in the spell's description, you can even just detect if a creature is thinking within 30 feet of you, or any number of them. It takes an action, but then also as an action, you can still probe or read their surface thoughts, but without seeing them. So for an extra turn, so instead of a target you can see at the start, it just takes 1 extra turn of an action to focus? Maybe? Or is it only in a particular situation where you don't see them initially? I mean, it is only in the particular situation where you don't see them initially, but then why even bother with you have to see them in the start of the spell, if there's a feature later on in the spell that allows you to go past that? I was originally beginning to read through it and think like, oh, this is blocked by all the usual stuff, but not wood or dirt. Not wood or dirt. I don't have too much to add to that one, that was just a bit strange. Though probably the deeper feature outside of just the base detection thing, which dimension can be used to detect invisible creatures that at least have a bit of sentience or intelligence above 3. Similar to detect poisonous creatures from detect poison disease and the detect magic and things that are invisible with magic. It's another form of detection, stealthing or otherwise. The information you actually can get from it are first the surface thoughts, whatever's immediately looming on its mind, which simplifies it a bit, but then when you probe deeper. A neat thing about the probing, one is the base questions and the checks behind it, the target needs to make a wisdom saving throw, but they know in either case, whether they pass or fail, they know you probed them, or something had probed deeper. They can even make an intelligence check to knock you out. And not just knock you out, force you to go to another creature, it ends the spell. On a rival contested check. But more in particular on the information you can get when probing, it's not a choice of the list it gives you, it's all of it. Or most of it, at least, because it has... If it fails, you gain insight into its reasoning, if any, its emotional state, and something that looms large in its mind. The or comes next on what that something is, but it's the fact that it's an and there, meaning you get everything and then also that, not just a single fact of that list. Comes to the rating, some of its downsides is its concentration, but also concentration for only a minute, whereas a lot of the other detection is 10 minutes. Not really good in the initial searching, but as it brought in here and even the situation the spell describes itself, it's best used for interrogations. But it can also be used in bartering. Second level divination spell, not a ritual. Cast it before walking up to a merchant. Don't let him see you cast it. and easily be able to at least read the surface thoughts. You can't probe deeper, that'll break the deal, but you know. Again, interrogations of spies, bandits, war criminals, rivals, any mix. The fact it's only 2nd level, I thought this was 3rd or 4th. In fact, the component piece isn't even consumed, and it's 1 copper. I think the cheapest on here. For the information you can get, the fact they can contest it if you probe deeper and instantly end the spell, it's only a minute though. It's the fact it's the and on the information and not an or. And even once you probe deeper, yes, they might have a chance of ending it, but you can still jump to another target to not risk it. Well, actually, they could still get 1 chance in, but it's less likely to fail if that's the case. I mean, the fact they can save out of it, it's only a minute instead of 10 minutes, not a ritual. I still see this being picked up everywhere, both by organizations involving spying or interrogations, but also merchants. So nice to know the general reading that someone you're trying to sell to is giving. Even when it comes to players, this can be useful, especially in the social situations of walking around or said merchants again, but also interrogating enemies. Also, not to mention this goes over translation gaps, the information that you're going to get from them interrogation-wise. Because you can go into the reasoning and the deep dive, they only need to know a language, not the language you know, and you still get the information read out to you. Or at least, information you can interpret. 9 out of 10. It's useful for both the party and for NPCs, and in the multiple situations in that account as well. Information is power, and if you can take it directly from an enemy, all the better.